We are going to call a board meeting for a special session agenda to order August 23rd, 8 p.m. in the district office. And Trevor, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Just for information for the recording for people who might be listening, Renee Powell is on speakerphone with Dr. Phillips' phone, and my phone may ring. Saul Allen was thinking of calling in. He isn't feeling well. And so we have one board member on speakerphone who's attending that way. And so we'll see what happens next. So our one board action is for the superintendent's goals for 2023, and that was in our packet. But before we do that, the reason the meeting was called is this was taken from Dr. Phillips' contract number 8, and it said, annually and not later than August 30th, the board shall, in consultation with the superintendent, establish general goals and specific objectives for the school year. The goals and the objectives shall be established in writing and be among the criteria for the evaluation of the superintendent. I did not catch that in time for our August meeting when we had our August meeting, and our September 12th meeting was too late in order to meet the contract obligations for Dr. Phillips. So that's why we have a special meeting with one agenda. So the board action is Dr. Phillips sent us, and it's in the agenda, 4 goals. Do you want to speak about those, sir?
So superintendent goals should align with board goals. They should not be identical to board goals necessarily, but they should align with board goals. So in an attempt to do that, I have 4 goals. I did 2 of the goals are very similar to last year, and 2 of them I've changed a little bit to kind of represent where we are. So I will address real quick the Newburgh-Dundee Public School Board goals that were approved by the board, I believe, in March. And just, they had primarily one main board goal, which was to increase academic achievement for our students, student academic growth in reading, writing, and mathematics. And then they had a number of board priorities, and you've seen those. You have those in your packet. So my goals do mimic those a little bit. So goal 1, improve student achievement in math and English language arts. I focused on the benchmark grade levels, grades 3, 8, and 11. That meets an elementary mark, a middle school mark, and of course a high school mark. And they'd be measured in spring of 2024 by OSAS, which OSAS is SBAC. It's the statewide testing mechanism. I believe strongly in that. We're here about kids. We're here about student achievement. That one for me is paramount to what we're about. It's kids and kids learning. Goal 2 actually supports goal 1. Developing professional development for our certified staff and our classified staff. Between Jillian with the teaching and learning department and Tony with the special programs department, we've developed a lot of professional development that will be rolled out this year that is robust, relevant to our teachers and our aides. That one, I think, frankly, we're going to get a lot of mileage out of that. I think our teachers crave good quality professional development. Our aides definitely crave it, especially in the special ed sphere. They want to be trained up, and it's a way to value them as well by investing in them. Goal 3 is our bond. This community was generous enough by passing a $141 million bond a few years ago. That bond is, in a way, it feels like it's winding down. Most of the projects are wrapping up right now in time for school. our big project left is, of course, Dundee Elementary. But to ensure that that's done on time and on budget is a big, it's a promise to the community. And I think seeing that through is very important. And goal 4 is building relationship with the Newburgh community. Obviously, this community is still have some rifts, and somebody, I would dare say all of us, need to work on repairing those rifts and working together to try to bridge some gaps and work on some common ground, which hopefully is student achievement. We can all agree on student achievement. And so being very, very, very open and honest and available to the community is a goal of mine. I think we made some headway last year, but I don't think we're there yet. And I want to continue to focus on that as a goal.
Do board members have questions for Dr. Phillips or comments?
I have a question, not necessarily about the goals right now, but I want to take a step back in time. We are mainly a new board. A lot of us are new. The board goals were just approved and adopted, I believe, back in March of this year. Is that correct?
I believe so.
What my understanding is that a lot of times these are done for the upcoming school year. So I'm trying to understand, was this done in March because we were behind and didn't have one for last school year, and this was kind of trying to make up for that, or was this also in mind for this upcoming school year?
So I can address what I think, and then Trevor was on the board, so maybe he could add to it. I think it was both. I think it was to represent the current year, 22-23, and we're looking towards the future, 23-24.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it was. Okay. I mean, that was part of our mandate, right? Is to create board goals, and so that's what we did. And these are for the 2023-2024 school year. So,
how often does the board set those, or what is it usually in March of every year? From your experience, or?
I believe that this was the first time we had done that. I mean, most of you know the history of the last 2 years. So getting out of a chaotic time and moving forward, getting to a healthier state, this is one of those, right?
Sure.
I think that the next one, certainly if the new board sees anything that they don't like or that they want to add to it, I don't think that there's any problem with revisiting those things. But I think that the vision was to get those done and then move towards a strategic, plan, strategic goals, for a longer time period. So.
I would say that one of the interesting things about the board priorities is, like for instance, G, provide safe and reliable transportation system. This would probably be the first district I've ever been in that's in a goal statement, but that's very, very Newburgh because of what we went through, right? And so hopefully that would drop off pretty soon because we've established that. E, properly manage the bond. The bond's going to be done pretty soon, and so that could go away. So I like to see. I like to think that these priorities are fairly unique to the time they were written.
I appreciate that. I just want to get a little more context on that, and I appreciate you guys answering. I'm not saying we have to redo these. They look there's one goal I'm a little questionable about that, but the priorities I think help also take up thoughts of the board. I guess I'll give some input on the goals. And again, this is maybe more. It was the culture I was raised up in, being 20 plus years in corporate world and very much SMART goals oriented. I think the genre of the goals are good. I would like maybe, more, maybe call them objectives of how to achieve those goals. Maybe a couple more examples of those. something top of mind. Number 4, build relationships. Your first objective, the first few words, is be present and available. I would like to actually see a goal where you're more being an activist in that, and maybe offer, things of how you're gonna maybe you go out and do outreach or whatever the case may be, instead of just be present and available. Maybe I can't think of anything on very specific right now of what I guess I'm asking for. I don't know if you'd be holding a forum or whatever, but it's just I don't know, just the way I'm reading that is just I'm gonna and nothing against you, it's just I'm gonna sit here and I'll be available if anybody comes to my doorstep. But I think we need to do more outreach and be more active, and maybe it's like 2 or 3 times this year that I go out and talk to certain community groups, something like that. So
Yeah, and I could, I've met with City Club, I met with both Rotaries, I presented to all those, all 3 of those. I've spoke at City Hall, so I do those things, and I guess I could list those if you would like.
and that's fine. I don't. Well, did you want to say something, Trevor?
Well, I will say I'm on board, and I've had this conversation about SMART goals, and Dr. Phillips is very familiar with the acronym, right?
Mhm.
I think some goals are quantitative, some goals are qualitative, right? So you're asking, it sounds like, more specificity in what that looks like and how you're going to get there, right?
A little bit, yeah.
For me, right, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based, right? How are we going to measure them, right? Because with anything, if you're going to measure them, you got to have a baseline, you got to have a goal set for where you want to be and a time frame of what you want to get there.
Sure. I agree with that.
So I guess, thinking about this and Dr. Phillips' goals here, right? To me, I don't even know if this is even necessary, because my thought is we've written the goals, right? To me, I don't need Dr. Phillips to parrot what we've already put in place, right? He's our one employee. We've set the goals, and in my opinion, his job is to make sure that those goals get accomplished. He's got to through his employees, through all his employees, set the roadmap on how he's going to get these accomplished for us, right? And our job is to make sure that we monitor that and ask questions. And I guess one of the things we always said in the military: trust but verify, right? So having those conversations with them, reporting out on how those things are going in these types of meetings, to make sure that we're progressing towards those goals that we've set for them, to make sure that we're not surprised at the end of the 12 months, at the end of the year, that we didn't hit them, or that there's a surprise, right? So I guess that's my thought on that. But I agree with you, Jeremy. I think that if you're going to set a goal, you got to have, if you're going to be successful, you got to have a well thought out plan on how you're going to get to that end state.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that cost, and I appreciate that, Trevor. When you listed who you've reached out to, those are great, but there are very specific groups they're volunteering to be in those groups or clubs or whatever. That is not outreaching to our SPED community. That's not outreaching to our minority communities. That's not outreaching to, anything in between all that. That's kind of in trying to help bridge the gaps. I understand maybe the political the spectrum of where we've been the last couple of years. Those are the groups you've listed, may be good for trying to understand where we're at from a barometer standpoint of where we're at, kind of that political standpoint. But I think there's a lot of concerns out there that still could we could still try to do better outreach and make sure that they have opportunities to voice concerns, or at least be heard, and to see if that what is actually being done in the schools, at least being the communication comes up from the principals, and the principals goes to you, and then you share with us what stuff happens. Not saying there's ill intent, but maybe there's groups that don't feel the same way, right? And so it's just maybe a good feedback loop and trying to build trust in communication.
Yeah, and I agree. The two that you mentioned, we have a special ed parents group that meets, and I've attended that meeting twice. We also have a dual language group that meets, and mostly Hispanic parents at Edwards. I've attended that twice. So I've done those two, and so it'll be, yeah, what I don't want to do is say Superintendent Phillips will attend 10 of these in the year. I don't, because that'll be that I could do that in 2 months, right? So somehow I do think we need to continually talk about it. And if you're hearing something that there's a certain group that doesn't feel heard, I need to know that, and then I can reach out, that kind of thing. But I think sometimes, as Trevor said, when it's everything being quantitative, it's kind of tough. So hopefully we just have open communication, and when you hear of a need, you let me know and I do my best to meet it.
Well, I think 4 has passive language versus active language. Maybe that's sort of where you're getting, and that could be accomplished, if you're going to do sort of a quarterly check-in on your goals and say, hey, these are the groups that I meet, so it might be accomplished in terms of how you report it back to what we're doing. But the one thing I wanted to talk about is the potential to do a 360 evaluation for the school district within. I know the Caravaggio group does those. I know they have something through OSBA that they've sent out to us about doing some survey, but I don't know when the school district has done a 360 evaluation, which is engaging, parents, stakeholders, the community. So we get a pulse on how the community feels that the schools are doing. We have a lot of discord still, but I think we're just hearing from the margins in terms of really the loud voices about how people are feeling. And it might be a sort of a unifying way to bring the community together, or to rally around the schools and sort of understand. Have any of you guys participated in a 360? I feel like Newburgh did one maybe when Dr. Kim was here. I know you guys don't. Scott? Do you have any thoughts about 360 evaluations?
You're using a rather generic term, that term 360 eval process. OSBA's probably had that in place, to my knowledge, approximately 15 years. So that has grown and changed and morphed over time. And so where before it was a very broad swath, OSBA has tried to tighten it up so that people who have actual knowledge from various groups or various individual representatives can speak to the superintendent, as opposed to just throwing out a random straw poll and say, give us the feedback. So they've gotten better. As we sat through the presentation this weekend, 2 weekends ago, together at the OSBA training. So they have done a better job of tightening it up and getting to the folks that can represent. And I think it's driving home with what I'm hearing tonight with what you're looking for.
I was just going to add, several of us were able to attend the conference that Scott talked about, the Oregon School Boards Association. And one of the sessions, I think I went to 2 sessions on it, was on working with the superintendent and also strategic planning for the district. And I don't know if it's the same thing, but this isn't exactly a superintendent goal. And one of the things that I just took out of one of my notes there is the board adopts goals based on the superintendent's previous evaluation under the district strategic initiative goals. And I don't know that we have those in place for this board yet. And that was one of the things that's not to be discussed at this meeting, but hopefully the September meeting. How do we get to start really a strategic plan and strategic goals for the district? And so maybe it's not actually fair to talk about that when we don't have it in place yet for the entire school district of what we have in mind. And I think that the OSBA has a lot of structure that they can help us with, so that we get to a strategic plan for the school district. And I don't know if that's what you're referring to, kind of, Deb?
Well, I just am trying to remember when we had the school district do a 360 evaluation. And it sort of fits in with, I think, superintendent goals and how do we evaluate the work of the superintendent, but also as a board, what are we hearing from the community about their concerns for the school district? Where do they see our, it's like they're evaluating us in a way.
Right.
I think I'd need a little bit more information to go into a 360 evaluation. I just remember participating in probably one of the parent groups. And I'm just thinking, as we're embarking, just coming out of COVID, we've got a big transition with the board. We have a big transition with leadership in the district. That might be a way to draw the community together, but I think is probably not inexpensive to do. And we would want to do some looking into that.
I will kind of piggyback on it. I mean, the goal of something like that, and I think they are very expensive, is to get your pulse on how people are feeling. I think you've got different groups there too, right? You've got parents who and employees of the district who are much closer to what's going on within the institution, educational institution. And then you have community members and their degree of involvement or knowledge of what's going on within those institutions is going to vary, right? So, and then I think with anything like that, when you collect data or information, data and transfer that information into information and actionable things, right? You've got to have a goal in mind, right? And certainly, how you set up those surveys is going to determine what kind of useful information you get back on it, right? And I guess just to say, when we set up the listening or focus groups within the community, I think that those were well received. And I think some of the feedback was we need to do more of that, right? I think especially after word got out on how it went, others wish that they could participate in. So I think that that's something we definitely need to look at. We were very specific in the types of questions that we asked each of the different groups, whether it was parents or students or employees. So I think that that's something that we can do. That's it gets us involved, right? Because the board members were part of the group that went out there and were interviewing these individuals. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to get out there and interact with the community and develop those relationships, right? I think that that's important. But it's not just that. There is staff doing it also, and the communication personnel we're also out there. So I think that that's one way. I think it's certainly something that we can look into. And certainly look at what the costs are and what's involved with that. But I think an easy win is to continue setting up these types of focus groups and getting out there and interacting and interviewing people to get a pulse on, what people are thinking and how they're feeling, and if we're moving in the right direction.
Well, we need to take action on this at some point. One of the things that I had on my notes from this conference that many of us attended is goals should about the superintendent's goals. Goals should first be developed by the superintendent, which Dr. Phillips did and brought to the board for discussion. Goals should align with the strategic priorities of the district. And as I read these goals that he shared with us, all of them are also included in the priorities that were approved in March. And the third one is there should only be a couple of goals so as not to spread the superintendent's focus too thinly. And so 4 goals seem reasonable to me. And so we've discussed this, and maybe number 4, is that the one, Jeremy, that you're most concerned about having more specifics or just rewarding it, or is it okay as this and we, work it through it as we just talk with Dr. Phillips through the year?
Well, since you're specifically addressing me, I mean, as a current manager, I would work with, if it was a one-on-one relationship, I'd be working with Dr. Phillips on improving these, enhancing these. Yes, I don't understand it's qualitative versus quantitative. Bottom line is there's could be multiple objectives to help meet this, and it does not mean that you have to do like 10 a year, whatever, but there should be a little bit more meat to behind some of these. Like, but again, I'm only one person of a 7-person board.
Mhm.
So, I think I've had my moment to share my concerns that some of this should be a little bit more, a little more directed on what the objectives could be. To me, these are a little broad, but that's me. So.
I just want to ask you, Dr. Phillips, what do you have any, like, I'm sure as you put these together, you had maybe some ideas of how specifically you might get there, or what are your thoughts on like how much do you want to increase it? I'm not saying that has to be written down, but I mean, what's your plan to get to some of these things? I just like to hear some of the way that you would break it down and what your ideas are.
Yeah. So, do you want me to go by goal?
Yeah, I mean, you
Okay.
don't have to like super deep dive, but I think just giving us like maybe some ideas of, because it might look broad on paper, but I'm sure you have kind of a plan. And so
Yeah.
I think that would just be maybe go goal by goal. Don't have to dive too deep in the
Sure.
weeds, but just give us the broad strokes.
Sure. And so like goal one, I last year we did make some gains. I don't really think the gains were so much because pedagogy changed or because what teachers did was dramatically different. I think it was mostly a culture change, that testing matters. And let's all get behind it. If you watched our board meetings, you had 2 young ladies that were on our board and they pushed it at their level. And it was just kind of a bit of a Newburgh Education Foundation helped, Rotary helped. So it's kind of a community effort to let's look at testing a little different. So it was more of a culture change rather than a fundamental different in the classroom. So we will continue that, but also then goal 2 comes in with professional development. So how do we teach a little different to maybe be more efficient and more effective? So the PD kind of comes into that. That I really think our first win last year with student testing was more culture than anything, and a change in conversation. Well, I'll quote Drew Gallagher, our NEA president. He said it was marketing. And he's right. We marketed different. So now the work begins. And that's where 2 comes in more with PD.
Can I ask a question then about PD number 2? Can you explain a little bit the new staff mentorship program?
Well, a little bit. We've reached out to buildings and asked buildings for teachers that would want to be mentors. And then we've had principals say, yes, I think they'd be a great mentor. And then we're going to be pairing them with our new teachers. I don't have the down dirty gritty on how it's going to work. Partly because we wrote a grant to be able to pay those mentors, a good amount to kind of really invest in it. And we were unsuccessful in the grant. And so we've had to pivot a little bit. And so to be fair and to be honest, it's not going to be as robust as we wanted it to be, but we're bringing it back. Some mentoring is as simple as this is how you use your grade book. Some teachers, they're new, they don't know that. So, and then the bond is more, I don't know, it's kind of, I do site visits with Larry Hampton. I meet with Casey Cunningham from Cornerstone. I meet with Casey and his team once a month. So I'm meeting quite often with them, and the good news is they're great. I really don't have to do a lot, but I stay on it because I don't want to betray the community's trust with that money. And then the last one, we've talked a lot about that, but I do take ownership in the fact that I'm out and about a lot. I go to a lot of functions, not just sporting events, a lot of plays, a lot of music events, performing arts. I really appreciate those guys and what they do. And so I'm out and about a lot. And we have held some forums as Director Drawhart said, and had some success there. And some symposiums and things like that. I do think we can do better though. I think we could open up, well, let me back up. Last year we had some forums on busing, but that was reactive. That was trying to put out a fire. It would be nice this year to have a forum on, I don't know, communications. How can, we've got a new communications director. How can we communicate better? And have an open house where people can come in and just talk about it. And that is in the works. So trying to be a little bit more proactive than reactive, I think is maybe, would be a good idea there. The last thing I'd say about these goals, kind of to Jeremy's point, is I think one thing would be interesting for me to do during my superintendent comments is talk about things that have happened that month that are addressing these goals. We can say, we're going to have an open house, I think within a week or so, to open up Edwards. That's a milestone, right? That could be addressed in a board meeting that we're ticking away at the bond. We could talk, just so when we have professional development activities, when we do this, when we do that, if we're all talking about them or talking about maybe in a general sense is what Trevor said about all of them, they won't get put to the side in a binder and never talked about. That's what I'm afraid of.
Thank you. Yeah, I like that idea personally of the comments and just kind of going, because I think keeping it top of mind through the year will help. I don't want to set you up for failure or anything and have us get to the end of the year and be like, whoa, this didn't get done, or this did, or really did that, and I think it would just help throughout the year so that when we do get to that evaluation portion, you're reminding us of what you've been telling us all year versus, and we can kind of see where we were versus, have, like you said, putting it in a binder off to the side and then dusting it off at the end of the year. So yeah, I think personally, it's a great idea. Thank you for going through that for me.
This isn't this would be related to the goal, but and it would hopefully be in the September meeting, but at some point in community input, and this comes more through OSBA and strategic planning, I would like to see us do more thorough survey of parents, teachers, stakeholders in the community on some issues that, would be helpful for us to have information about. And I think it would take a professional to help us get a survey together like that, but that's just something that would relate then to building relationships. So, and that's not necessarily your goal, but board goal that we can discuss.
Yes.
Does anybody have any further comments? So does anybody want to make a motion to adopt the goals as presented?
Yeah, I'll move that the Newburgh Dundee School District Board of Directors approve Dr. Phillips 2023-2024 goals and objectives.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Renee, are you voting? I guess that we have 5 people.
Yes, hi, sorry.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have 6 ayes, no nays, and no, so thank you. So I think that is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay, meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, Renee.
Thanks, Frank.
Bye.
Well, that was pretty good.
Pretty good.